Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to Stormgate Central, and in today's video we've got all of the important changes that have come in with the early access build of Stormgate. So the patch notes are finally here. I did do a video the other day going over the 10 most important changes, but this time we've got the actual numbers, absolutely everything that is changing. This is going to probably be a fairly lengthy video, so strap yourself in there and grab yourself a drink, because there is a lot to go over here. So just quickly before we begin with this, I want to share with you guys some interesting stats that Frost Giant Games have posted. So here's a little day one preview of early access showing where people are spending their time playing. So out of all of the games played here, 48% of all games were the campaign. Now that's not too surprising. I think it's the only portion of the game that nobody has really experienced, even early access backers and people who have been in the first ever alpha. But then it's quite interesting to see that in second place we have custom games here with 27% of the share. So I guess a lot of people have been booting up a custom game, you know, seeing what all of the factions do, seeing what all of the units do, learning about the abilities and whatnot. I can't imagine it's them actually setting up 1v1s. I think they would just go into versus, so that kind of surprised me there. And then for versus we've got 15% and then finally 10% for co-op. And then here for this one, this shows the faction selection. This is pretty unsurprising. Most people are playing Vanguard, and then Celestials and Infernals see a fairly equal share, but this is going to be very different to what you're going to see with the pro players at the top of the ladder that I'll show you guys in a second. It's not really surprising that people play Vanguard. It's the human faction. I think people in general gravitate towards the faction they're most familiar with, and that will be the Vanguard. It's also just the furthest to the left and all of that, so I think we have some sort of a bias towards it there. However, when we come and look at the top 500 players on the leaderboard here on untapped.gg, we can actually see that 38% of them are playing as the Celestials. Then we've got 33% for Vanguard, and then 29% for the Infernals. But if you look specifically at the top 20 here, they are all Celestial or Infernals. There is not one Vanguard player right now in the top 20. Now, maybe it's just because the Celestials got a lot of changes this patch and people want to start by playing them, seeing how far they can get up the ladder and trying them out. But I think that may be a little bit of a sign that could Vanguard possibly be somewhat undertuned and need to be looked at there. I'm not sure. I'm sure it's something that the developers are going to be looking into. Like I say, the Vanguard do have a slightly better share in the top 500 players than the Infernals even, but the Celestials coming in at 38% there. That's pretty interesting to me. To be honest, I still haven't really figured out which race I want to main. I definitely want to be Celestials or Vanguard. Let me know down below in the comments, guys, which faction are you going to main? Alright guys, so let's just jump straight into the patch notes here. Quickly before we do though, if you guys are enjoying the content here on the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be bringing you plenty more news on Stormgate as we go through early access, as well as builds, casts and guides and all of that good stuff. So if that's something that you're interested in, please hit subscribe and help support me here on the channel. That is ever so much appreciated. Maybe even check below if you are subscribed, because I can see over 70% of you guys who regularly watch my videos aren't subbed, so you may just be getting these in your recommended box and think that you're subscribed, but you're not, so that would be ever so much appreciated. Cheers, guys. Okay, let's just jump straight in here. So this is basically a really big README file that they dropped in the Discord, so it's not going to look too pretty on the screen here, but I'll do my best to show these for you guys on screen. So one of the first big changes is, of course, they increased the tier up time, so tiering up to the second tier now, so that means your Greater Shrine or your Command Center and whatnot, that now takes 60 seconds, up from 15 seconds, so they've quadrupled the time it takes there. Then of course they have buffed the creep camps, so creeps are generally stronger and they give many more resources on death at all levels. And here's a bit of an overview of how it looks now. So level 2 creep camps, they previously had a 100% health buff and 67% more damage. That has gone up now to 150% health and 100% damage. And you guys can see here over the levels, they've gotten a pretty significant buff there, and they're also going to give, you know, more resources because of that. However, this one I didn't know about. So vision camps, they now apparently grant a passive global vision bonus when captured. So as well as just showing the vision around that particular camp, your whole army is presumably getting some sort of a bonus here. Same thing with speed camps, they now grant a passive global speed bonus, presumably again to your entire army. That's pretty massive. Health camps grant a passive global health regeneration bonus, and energy camps do the same thing. This change is also pretty impactful. The time to capture a point has been decreased from 12 seconds to 4 seconds, so once you've killed those creeps, you don't have to hang around on the tower for as long as you had to in Frigate. Now we've got some massive changes to the Vanguard and Veterancy here, so as I covered in the last video, all Vanguard units are going to get the same bonus here from each level of Veterancy, 20% max health and 10% weapon damage, but they each get their individual speciality as well for each rank of Veterancy. And these are all of them right here, so Bobs actually get 20% construction speed, so if you get a Bob and you rank it up or promote it to level 3, it's actually going to have 60% faster construction speed. So you could just sort of keep that one Bob promoted somewhere and use him to build all your buildings. That's actually something that could be quite effective. Lancers get +5 armor, Scouts get +2 to their vision, Exos get 0.5 weapon range, the Medtechs get more energy regeneration, Gravens here get more movement speed, Hedgehogs get more weapon range, Vulcans get faster attack speed, the Atlas gets more weapon range, which I think is one of the biggest changes there. Hornets get more attack speed, Evacs get more movement speed, Sentinels get more energy regeneration, and the Helicarrier gets more armor. So that's actually a pretty nice buff to Veterancy there. I didn't really expect a buff to Veterancy because it's been pretty powerful in Frigate, but there you go. There are a couple of new faction-wide upgrades here for the Vanguard as well. So there's the Orbital Energy Optimizer, which increases your top bar energy regen by 50%, and you can research that one at the scrapyard. And then you've got the Advanced Orbital Energy Optimizer, which does the same thing. It increases it by 50% again. So basically, if you get both of these upgrades, you are going to be able to get 100% more energy. So don't sleep on that one. If you're used to throwing down the scrapyard and then just never looking at it again, there are 2 new upgrades there. Bob Overcharge has seen some pretty significant nerfs, so the damage bonus has been decreased by 50%, as has the armor bonus. Construction speed bonus has been decreased by 50% as well. The duration has been increased from 30 seconds to 45 seconds, so if you thought that Bob Overcharge lasted for a long time before, well, it's going to last even longer now. But they've put in a new upgrade called Overcharge Amplifier again at the scrapyard, and this will double the effectiveness of the overcharge. So then it will be like the old overcharge, only it's going to last for 45 seconds now. So that old powerful overcharge is still going to be available in the mid game once you get this upgrade, and it's going to last an insane amount of time. Little change to the shields up top bar ability here for the Vanguard. They now only absorb 90% of incoming damage, down from 100%. So if you just manage to save a unit and it's got like 10 HP, that's actually not going to save it. It's still going to die. Big nerf to promote here. Energy cost has been increased from 5 to 15. So it's going to cost you 3 times as much energy now to promote your units. Okay, next up we've got Lancer changes. So they've actually changed the Fortified Impaler trait, which used to be called Attenuation Armor. Only decreases damage by 2 instead of 3 now, and it won't get triggered by like area-wide abilities like Infest or Trample or Wraithstones. It will only get activated by units actually targeting the Lancer. And then there's a new upgrade called Mitigative Guard, and that will improve the before-mentioned Lancer's Fortified Impaler to reduce incoming damage by 4. So actually, if you get this upgrade, you can make the Attenuation Armor, as it used to be called, even better. Now, the Scout has a brand new ability. It's called Pounce, and it will intercept a nearby enemy unit, increasing the unit's movement speed and dealing 15 damage plus another 15 in light on impact. So it sounds like it does a massive amount of damage, but it's actually going to give the enemy unit a movement buff to allow them to get away from the Scout there. So that's kind of interesting. So here are the Exo changes. Health decreased from 150 to 130. Damage increased though from 14 plus 2 heavy to 14 plus 8 heavy. But then the gunner weapon cooldown has been changed from 1.3 to 1, so that's the rate of fire essentially. So they're going to fire slower, but they're going to do more damage with each shot, which I think is going to help with micro. They've also got that new tier 3 upgrade here called Survival Protocol that allows Exos to negate fatal damage once every 120 seconds, and once again you will need the high command for that. The Hedgehog has seen a little bit of a nerf here, so they've nerfed the rate of fire from 0.3 to 0.4 per second when they're in the mobile mode. In deploy mode, it's gone up from 0.2 to 0.3 seconds. Deployed mode ammo recharge time has increased as well from 0.5 to 0.6. And the weapon range upgrade for the Hedgehogs now only increases it by +4 instead of +5. So a little bit of a nerf overall there for Hedgehogs. Next up we have the Vulcans. So first off, the jump jets can no longer traverse through cliffs or chasms. I guess that was unintended. So no more pesky jump jetting up into the natural unbroken crown of the enemy. They've also changed up the damage model here for all 3 phases of the chain cannon on the Vulcan. So depending on, you know, how fast it's firing, they're going to do the same damage, but now some of the damage has been shifted into the light category. So it's going to do the same damage essentially versus these light units, but it will do less damage against heavy units or anything else. Now, they don't actually list this here for the Vulcan, but I do believe the Vulcans now get the jump jets as standard. I think they just, you get a Vulcan and you have the jump jet ability. I don't think you have to actually upgrade it anymore. But what the upgrade will instead do is make them stun enemies whenever you hit them with the jump jet. And then there's a new tier 3 upgrade called Peak Performance, which will fully power up the Vulcan's weapon after it uses the jump jet. So as soon as you jump jet in there, your minigun is going to be spun up to the maximum effective damage. Some changes to the Atlas here. Deployed mode weapon swing has been increased from 0.5 to 0.75. So I'm not 100% sure what weapon swing means. I think it's the amount of time that it takes for the shot from the Atlas to land on the ground. So that's been increased across the board, if I'm understanding this correctly. And then the upgrade for the Atlas's Purification Ordnance has seen a buff. So that's now going to do 20 damage per second, up from 15 damage per second. So this is the one that leaves a patch of fire on the ground, but you are going to need a high command to get it now. Next up, we have the Hornet. So the Hornet now has the Release Skymine ability again. So the Hornet used to have this ability, then they gave it to the Evac, and now they're giving it back to the Hornet again. This is going to be an upgrade ability, and you can get it at the Machine Lab. For the Evac, movement speed has been increased from 4.5 to 5. However, picking up a deployed Atlas decreases the movement speed of Evacs by 25%. Picking up 2 Atlases does not further decrease movement speed. So whether you have 1 or 2 Atlases in there, you're going to take a 25% movement speed penalty, which is going to obviously give the enemy player a bit of a better opportunity to snipe you out of the sky. Now, I'm going to skip over a couple of things here, guys. I'm going to skip over the Graven and the Helicarrier. I do have another video where I go in depth on all of the brand new tier 3 units, so I will link that up in the cards if you guys are interested in learning absolutely everything there is to know about them. But for the purpose of this video, you guys probably already know about them, so we're going to skip over those, and I'm going to try and concentrate on things that you may not have realized yet. Okay, next up, some pretty big nerfs here to the Sentry Post for the Vanguard. So health has been decreased from 450 to 330. Weapon damage, though, so this is the unmanned Sentry Post, has been increased from 15 to 20, so that's just like the default attack. So I think that makes sense. Sentry Posts were definitely a little bit too tanky, especially when you had, you know, some Exos in there along with the Bob Overcharge. They were a little bit too easy to repair and keep up there. For the flat cannon here, so that's when you've got an Exo inside, the anti-ground range is increased from 10 to 12, and the damage has been increased from 19 to 22. So they did give this a pretty hefty nerf in one of the previous betas where they nerfed the range and the damage, and now it seems they want to kind of go back on that and increase it just a tad. Alrighty, with that said, let us move on to the Infernals. So one of the biggest changes here is that now you gain Animus from enemy units dying around your units. But Animus gained from enemies is 50% of the Animus that you would gain from friendly units dying. However, starting Animus has been decreased from 25 down to 0, so you are going to have to get out of the map and do something to get any Animus at all. And then the Animus absorption rate has been increased from 10 to 12, so you can in general expect Infernal players to be getting a lot more Animus here. As for the rituals, Summon Effigy has had its cost decreased from 10 to 5, cooldown decreased from 30 seconds to 20 seconds, and the off-shroud duration has been decreased from 60 seconds to 20. So I guess they want you to use these more frequently, but they aren't going to last as long if you're using them off-shroud. Nightfall Infestation, Animus cost decreased from 50 to 25, no longer requires a greater shrine to cost, and cooldown has been decreased from 120 to 90 seconds. Deploy delay as well has been decreased from 2 seconds to 1.5, so you're going to have half a second less time now to get out of that circle with your army, and the radius though has been decreased from 6 to 3. So again, they want you to use this more frequently, but it's overall going to be a little bit less powerful because of the radius decrease there. And then Summon Flayed Dragon has actually moved from the top panel to the Elder Shrine. Animus cost has been decreased from 300 to 150, but the cost has been increased from 500 to 700. So big resource increase there, but massive decrease on the amount of Animus. So for the Fiend here, big nerf, damage decreased from 8 to 6, but you guys will see in the upgrades that can be made up in a second. For the Brute, Cost has been decreased from 150 Luminite to 100. Supply has also gone down from 3 to 2. Health has been decreased from 200 to 160, and then the armor has been decreased from 10 to 5. So you're going to see more brutes now, but they're not going to be as powerful. Weapon period, so the attack speed has been increased as well from 1.8 seconds to 2.2. However, there are some very interesting new upgrades. So there is Sundering Soul Frenzy, and this will increase the movement speed of spawned fiends by 25% for 10 seconds whenever the brute uses Sunder Soul, and that one can be researched at the Hellforge. So if your brute dies and you get the fiends out, they're not going to be affected, but if you manually split your brutes, those fiends will have 25% faster movement speed for 10 seconds, which is pretty massive, right, if you want to rush into an enemy worker line or get a snipe on a building. Then there's a new tier 3 upgrade called Sundering Soul Craze, which increases the attack speed of fiends by 50% for 10 seconds when they use Sunder Soul. So once you've got both of those upgrades and you split those fiends, they're going to have 25% faster movement speed and 50% faster attack speed, which essentially equates to 50% more damage, which will actually mean those fiends will be more powerful than any fiend that we've seen before. Magmadons now only require the Greater Shrine instead of the Shadow Cleft, so that means when you see a Greater Shrine come out, they could be getting Magmadons. Damage has been decreased from 30 plus 40 to structures to just a flat out 30. And then there is a new upgrade, Raging Tendons, increases the movement speed of Magmadons by 25%. Hellborn, once again, they only need the Greater Shrine instead of a Hellforge, so you're not going to need these upgrade buildings, guys, now to get out these tier 2 units. You just build a Greater Shrine and you can get out Magmadons, you can get out Hellborn. That's a big change there. The cone splash damage has been decreased from 50 to 25% of the primary damage, and there is once again a new upgrade called Molten Touch, and what this will do is on hit, it will light a target on fire, dealing 8 damage per second for 3 seconds. So once again, that's your tier 3 upgrade there, and you're going to need the Elder Shrine. Now the gaunts have seen some of the biggest changes, so the cost has been changed from 50 and 5 Therium to 100 and 25 Therium, but for 2. So the Luminite cost is the same, because now you get 100 Luminite, but you get 2 of them, but it's going to cost you 25 Therium for 2, whereas before it was 5 Therium for 1. Primary damage has been decreased from 8 plus 4 light to 6 plus 3 light. Bounce damage remains the same. Anti-ground range decreased from 6 to 5, anti-air range decreased from 8 to 6, but you can build 2 at a time. So there is a big reason, though, for this overall nerf to the Gaunt, and that is because of the new upgrade, Plague Axe, which once again is going to bring, of course, Infest back for the Gaunt, but you do have to research this at the Ritual Chamber. So you're going to see most Infernal players getting that Ritual Chamber, and if you do, they're most likely going to be getting the Gaunt upgrade here. The Reaper's Rush upgrade does still exist in the game, but it's going to be a tier 3 upgrade, and it's going to require both the Greater Shrine and the Plague Axe upgrade to already have been purchased. So the Hexen, they now need the Ritual Chamber instead of just a Greater Shrine, so kind of, you know, the opposite of what we saw with the Magmadon and the Hellborn there. The Skull of Shadows cooldown has been decreased from 10 to 5 seconds. The Venom Traps now have a 5-minute timed life duration, so they will eventually expire. And then again, for the Miasma training, the Hexen Master training, you are going to need that tier 3 building, the Elder Shrine. The Weaver is getting much the same treatment as the Magmadon and the Hellborn. It now requires only the Greater Shrine instead of the Ritual Chamber. And Lash has now been reworked in order to incorporate the Tether ability. So now this is how it reads: launches a harpoon at a target unit, pulling it to the location of the Weaver. If the target is an enemy, it deals damage equal to 20% of its health and stuns it for 2 seconds. If the target is friendly, it fully restores its white health. So it doesn't need to have those 2 abilities because it pretty much used them at the same time anyway. Now you just lash an enemy and it's going to hit them with the 20% damage there at the same time. Now Shadow Flyers have gotten some pretty big changes here. So the cost has been changed from 25 and 50 to 50 and 75 for 2. So overall that is actually cheaper. So you build 2 at a time now. The Bloodburst primary damage has been increased from 40 to 50. Splash damage has been increased from 20 to 25, and then they've got this brand new Dive Bomb ability that plunges into an enemy structure, dealing 100 damage and reducing its armor by 50. And I've showcased this in my tier 3 units video. If you guys want to see it there, you can just send about 15 of these guys into a command post, and they will just pretty much one-shot it. So interested to see if people are kind of going to abuse this to snipe off important buildings. It doesn't really feel like there's any way that you can defend against this, but I don't know, maybe it's not worth the resources to snipe buildings. For the Harbinger, so that's the drop unit for the Infernals, Descend now has a 5-second cooldown, so that's what makes your Harbinger go down on the ground, so you can unload your units. And then there is a new upgrade called Seismic Slam that allows the Harbinger's Descend ability to actually stun surrounding enemy ground units for 1 second, and you research that one at the Shadow Cleft. So you can just land directly on top of units and get off a little stun. I'm not sure 1 second is really enough. Is that worth it? Because as soon as they get out of that stun, they're going to be able to snipe your Harbinger, right? Here we've got the Spriggan, so health has been decreased from 200 to 160. Again, this swing time decreased from 0.4 to 0.1, and then the backswing decrease. Is this tennis? However, weapon period, that's the attack speed, has been decreased from 1.4 to 1. Damage has been changed from 5 to 2, but +2 versus heavy, so they're now going to be way less effective versus light units. And you now need the Shadow Cleft instead of the Ritual Chamber to build them. So Binding Saliva has seen some big changes here as well. It decreases movement speed in addition to attack and production speed, and it will now debuff 1% per hit instead of 6% per hit, and the max is still 30%. However, there is an upgrade which increases the maximum potency of Binding Saliva from 30% all the way up to 60%. So if you've got a bunch of Spriggans and you're chasing a unit across the map, let's say you're chasing a bunch of Vulcans that can't fire up at you, you're actually going to be reducing their movement speed by 1% for each hit, up to 30%, so that's going to be pretty useful there. Okay, last unit here for the Infernals, and that is going to be the Flayed Dragon. So its health has been increased from 600 to 800, and then change for one of the buildings here, the Shroud Stone cost has been increased from 50 Luminite to 100, and the damage has been increased from 18 to 27, so Shroud Stones, much more powerful than before, guys. Alright guys, we're getting there. We have one race left to go over here, the Celestials. So for general changes, of course, now you start with the Prism. It will start on your Luminite mine. You can also access a sub-menu from either an Arc Ship or a Prison, so you don't have to use Q to build anymore. You can use Z on those two units. And then Morph Cores are now an alternate way to build structures, and they can morph into all structures at a discount and greatly reduced build time. Morph Cores do not need Cascade Field to morph into structures, so that means you can take a Morph Core across the map, get into somebody's base, for example, and just plop down a proxy building. Any building for the Celestials, you can use the Morph Core. They do get a discount because, of course, the Morph Core costs 100 Luminite, so it is worth building these to build your buildings out on the map with, but of course it's going to take up that precious building time when you could be pumping out Prisms instead to boost your Luminite harvesting rate. Now, power has seen some pretty massive changes as well, so you're no longer prevented from building structures or firing weapons when you're in the red power. However, there are some global power benefits to being in the yellow or indeed the green. So for green power, this will grant moderate construction speed, production speed, research speed, structure weapon speed, and structure regeneration bonuses. In addition, all friendly units in your own cascade field gain moderate energy regeneration. And then for the yellow power, this will grant you light structure regeneration bonuses, and all friendly units in your own cascade field will gain light energy regeneration. If you're in the red power, this will give you moderate construction speed, production speed, and research speed penalties. And in addition, structure weapon speed is greatly reduced. So whilst being low in power is not going to stop you from building buildings anymore, it is going to be a big detriment, so you still want to make sure you're building plenty of power banks and keeping yourself quite literally in the green. So Astral Interventions, these are the top bar abilities for the Celestials. Most of them can now actually hold a maximum of 3 charges, but they will cost power to use, and any power cost incurred by them will slowly regenerate over time at a rate of 10 power per minute. So the more surplus of power you have, the more power banks you've built, the more of these top bar abilities you're going to be able to use without actually putting your base in the red, because you don't want to overspend here, put your base in the red, and then have your unit production speed slowed down and your construction speed slowed down and all the rest of it. So having power, a massive surplus of it, can actually be a big benefit. So Sovereign's Watch has seen some pretty big changes here as well. It's now going to cost 15 power. It of course has 3 charges. The recharge time has been decreased from 120 seconds to 90. It deals a consistent 20 damage per second, but it can no longer attack workers, so you can't use this as like a cheesy proxy thing across the map. If you go and put this on a worker line, it's not going to attack the workers. But there is one of these faction-wide upgrades you can get called Sovereign Fury. There's also a brand new astral intervention called Summon Aeon Gate, and this will summon a gate within the cascade field at the target location. It costs 100 Luminite and 100 Therium, and it has no power cost outside of the cost that it takes to actually build the structure. So these are basically Nidus canals, guys. You build one, let's say in your base, and then you can build another one somewhere else on the map, and your units can go into the Aeon Gate and then unload out of another Aeon Gate. I haven't seen this used much yet, but this is one of the late game astral interventions, so you are going to need a pretty highly upgraded arc ship. Now, power redistribution has actually been removed from the game, and it's instead been replaced by an ability called Power Surge, which will buff one of your buildings at the cost of 10 power. So for example, if you use this on a production structure, units are going to be trained 50% more quickly. For a power bank, it's going to increase the energy regeneration and the transfer rate of the energized to your units as well. Defensive structures get detection and 15% increased attack speed. For the collection array, nearby prisms gain 3 bonus health regen per second. For the Therium Purifier, nearby friendly prisms gain 50% increased movement speed. For the Guardian Nexus, nearby friendly structures will get 25 armor. For the Ascension Matrix, so that's the other upgrade building, nearby friendly units will gain 20 increased damage. And then for the Aeon Gate, this will actually stealth the gate. So that Nidus Canal gate I was talking about before, if you use Power Surge on it, it's gonna be invisible. And units that exit this structure are stealthed for 30 seconds as well. So you can untoggle this ability, Power Surge, whenever you want. If you want your power back, you just use it again on the building and you'll get your power back and the building will lose its perk. Now, moving on to structures here, the Arc Ship has seen some massive changes, so it's had a pretty big nerf to its health here. It also costs 200 Luminite less, supply has gone down, however it now always flies and it can no longer land or attack. But it does have an energy pool and it has a couple of abilities. So Skyward Salvation heals a target friendly unit for 300 health over 20 seconds, and the healing will be cancelled if the target unit is damaged. So you start with this ability in the game, and then there's a new upgrade called Celestial Hyperdrive that you can get from the Therium Purifier, and this is another faction-wide one, and it increases the movement speed of Arc Ships, Arc Stations, and Arc Fortresses and Morph Cores by 50%. And then it also gets another interesting ability for the fully upgraded one, which is called the Arc Fortress, called Fate's End, which channels a devastating arch beam towards a target enemy structure. This beam increases in power every 5 seconds, dealing 1500 damage over 15 seconds. It costs 75 energy and it has a 15-second cooldown. So you can essentially just float your Arc Fortress across the map and beam down a command post. That's pretty badass. The power banks have gotten a lot more expensive, so they now cost 100 Luminite instead of 50. Their health has also been decreased. The power they produce has been decreased. So I guess now that power is somewhat more important to the Celestials and you can use all of those top bar abilities, they don't want to make it too cheap to gain access to that. Okay, the collection array. So the collection array can now actually be built straight through the quick macro panel. You don't need a morph core, but if you do want to build it through the quick macro panel, it is going to mean you need the cascade field there from like an arc ship, for example, and it's going to cost you 450 Luminite. So it will cost you 350 from a morph core, and then the morph core itself, of course, costs 100, but it will cost you 450 otherwise. So it costs the same, but it's just going to, you know, if you have your arc ship close to an expansion, you can just float it over there and just straight up build one of these instead of having to wait for the morph core to come out. They've also nerfed the health of them though from 1200 all the way to 500, so that's more than a 50% nerf to the health. Build time has been increased from 8 seconds to 50 seconds, and the deploy time of them, so you can lift these off of your Luminite mine and then float them away, so the deploy time has been increased from 2 seconds to 30 seconds. So I guess they want to make them much more susceptible to harassment. The link node, so these are like the little turrets here for the Celestials that you can upgrade into one of 2 turrets. The time to build has been decreased from 25 seconds to 5. and the cost has been increased from 25 to 50. And Cascade Field Generated has been increased from 6 all the way up to 15. But then you've got to upgrade it, and the first one called the Spark Node, so that's the one that fires really, really quickly. As you can see, it's had its weapon period decreased from 1 second to 0.3, but the damage has been reduced from 20 to 7, but plus 3 light. So against light units here, it's going to be doing half the damage it did before, but it's now firing 3 times as fast. In fact, more than 3 times as fast. So overall, I would say that is a pretty nice buff. But this is the big one here, the Blast Node. This renamed from the Warp Node. The damage radius has been increased from 1.5 up from 1, and then the half damage radius has been decreased from 2 to 1.75. So it has like an inner radius where it would do the more damage, and then an outer radius where it will do a little bit less. These things are super powerful though. I don't know about you guys, but I've been running into a lot of them, and they absolutely decimate your army. So the tech tree, as you may have noticed if you've been playing as the Celestials, has been completely revamped. One of the buildings that used to be an upgrade building is now the primary production building, and it's called the Creation Chamber, and it will make the Kree, the Argent, Scanners, and the Cabal. The Starforge is now the secondary production building, and this will basically build all of your war machines, so it will build the Vector, the Scythes, and the Sabres. And then you have the Legion Hall, which used to be the Bastion, and that one will build Seraphim, Animancers, and Archangels. So the Fabricator has been, of course, renamed to the Therium Purifier. It no longer requires a Morph Core to construct, and it can also no longer build prisms, but it still comes with a free prism. So it's basically just a drop-off point for Therium now, and it also has the 2 upgrades, of course, for like the faction-wide ones for the Celestials that I've already mentioned. And then there is a couple of new upgrade structures as well. I'm not going to go too in-depth with that, but you guys will notice as you play the game that a lot of the upgrades for the various units have moved around to either the Guardian Nexus, which is the first upgrade building, or the Ascension Matrix, which is the second one. Generally speaking though, the Guardian Nexus is going to give you the upgrades for the Creation Chamber, and the Ascension Matrix is going to give you all of the upgrades for stuff from the Starforge or the Legion Hall. Now the Prisms have seen some pretty big changes here as well, so their health has been decreased from 400 to 260. They now have the light tag instead of the heavy tag, which means that they will be far more susceptible to getting sniped, but they can actually mine from a Luminite mine without the aid of a collection array. So you don't need one on every single mine now, you can just go and build prisms there right off the bat. But they have decreased the mining efficiency by 25% to compensate for that. So it's going to be the same amount of mining rate there, you just need 4 now instead of 3. Now for the Argent, cost has been decreased here by 50 Luminite, the supply has been decreased, build time has been decreased as well, the health as well, weapon range decrease, pretty much decreases across the board here. Damage has been decreased from 10 plus 5 heavy to 8 plus 4 heavy. They pretty much just like scaled this unit down, you know, it costs less, but it does less. It's pretty much going to be the same sort of unit though. However, they no longer have the ability that they had before. Instead, Photo Restoration is now just going to increase the energy that you gain per second when you're out of combat. And then the tier 3 upgrade called Longshot Module will increase the range of Argent's charged weapon by +2. Now for the Kree, Rollout, so that's the upgrade for them, will now increase their armor by 50 while they're rolling around. Blaze of Light, so this is where they blow up, has had its damage decreased from 40 to 20, and the Kree won't be able to move now or attack while they're exploding, so it'll be very easy to move away from. However, there is an upgrade called Radiant Fury, which will increase the damage done by Blaze of Light by 20, and it will allow the Kree to move before they explode there. So it's basically going to be like the old Kree, but now you just need the upgrade for it. Now the Vectors have seen some pretty big changes here as well. There's been a few little tweaks here to their build time, the supply cost, the cost of them, their damage models, and all of that. But the bigger changes really is that they no longer use energy. So Delta Jump and Recall no longer cost any energy, it's just got a cooldown. However, what you're going to find is that when you get the Vectors, they just have Delta Jump. They won't have the recall ability, and you will now instead have to go and upgrade this ability at the Guardian Nexus. So just be aware of that. You are going to be able to, you know, blink around with them, so to speak, but you're not going to be able to recall them until you've got that upgrade. So the Scythes have seen some really big changes as well. They are now much more of a bigger, sort of tankier air unit. Again, they've had their cost increased, their supply cost, the build time, etc., the health, but they also do double damage of what they did before. The Pulse Shield ability, though, has seen some big changes, so the duration has been increased up to 10 seconds now, the cooldown has been increased up to 15 seconds, however, it only reduces damage done to the scythe by 50%, down from 100%. I wished I had realized that when I played against them the other day, because I was just running away thinking I wouldn't be able to do any damage to them, but hey, you learn something every day. So the Saber here has also seen some pretty big changes. First of all, they've gotten a little bit of a range buff, and then the Mass Accelerator and the Self-Repair, they no longer share the same cooldown. So Mass Accelerator will do damage to the Saber and increase its movement speed, and then Self-Repair will basically just repair up the Saber, but make it so it can't move anywhere. However, the Mass Accelerator health cost has been increased from 75 up to 100. Self-Repair now fully restores the Saber's health, and basically the Core Ascendancy upgrade now improves the Saber's abilities by 200% up from 100%, so it's going to make you repair much more faster, and it's going to make you move around the map much more faster as well. So it's going to increase the duration of the Mass Accelerator up from 5 seconds to 15 seconds. So for 15 seconds, you can actually, micro these units around like crazy. And then the heal rate of the Self-Repair is going to increase from 10 health per second to 30 health per second. So the Animancers here, they have seen a little bit of a nerf. So the Dark Prophecy ability here, which is like the big black hole that they can spawn in. The Phase 1 damage, which does 20 damage per second, has had its duration increase here from 2 seconds to 4 seconds, but the Phase 2 damage, which will do even more damage, 40 damage per second, has been decreased from 6 seconds, to 4 seconds. So it's now going to do the lower tier damage there for a little bit longer and a little bit less of the higher tier damage. And then we have the Seraphim and the Archangel, but once again, I have fully covered all of the changes to these two brand new units in my other video, so once again, I'm going to link you guys up if you're interested in that. Whew. Those were some patch notes, guys. I can't believe we actually got to the end of those. I know it was a pretty lengthy video, so if you got to the end of this, do me a favor, leave me a comment down below and just let me know, because I'm almost certain that nobody is going to bother listening to the entirety of this video, so it would be surprising. In any case, guys, if you do enjoy the content here on the channel, don't forget to hit up that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future Stormgate videos. Have a great day, have a good time in Stormgate, and I'll see you guys in the next one.